Welcome everyone to the webinar. Thank you all for taking time to join us today. My name is Andreas Bitsarakis and I am the Director of Broadband for Select Spectrum. Today we will be going over the proposed Citizen Broadband Radio Service Band Plan, the presently available 3.65 gigahertz portion of the band, and its planned transition into the GAA portion of CBRS. At the end of the webinar, we will hold a Q&A for any questions that you might have. Please note, I might elect to answer some questions offline and plan to answer any respective questions in a timely manner post-webinar. The current slide provides a visual of the three-tiered CBRS band plan. In Tier 1, incumbents, including authorized federal and grandfathered fixed satellite service users currently operating in the 3.5 gigahertz band, will be protected from interference from priority access and general authorized access users. Tier 2 is the priority access tier, consisting of priority access licenses, also known as PALs, that will be issued using competitive bidding within the 3550 to 3650 megahertz portion of the band. As the rules exist today, each PAL is to include a 10 megahertz channel, in a single census tract for up to 3 years. Up to 7 total PALs may be assigned in any given census tract, with up to 4 PALs going to any single applicant. You may notice that the PAL range is 100 megahertz, but that the 7 PALs only add up to 70 megahertz. The PALs actually have no set frequencies, and the remaining 30 megahertz will be a part of the GAA tier. Bidders may acquire up to 2 consecutive PAL terms in any given license area during the first auction. PALs will be subject to a use it or lose it requirement, which means that license holders may choose to lease excess capacity. If not, the bandwidth would also be added to the GAA tier. In the third tier, you will see GAA, which stands for General Authorized Access. In this tier, operators will be in a sharing access regime, requiring coordination via the SAS with other users to avoid interference, essentially the same as 3.65 gigahertz is currently. General authorized access users are permitted to use any portion of the 3550 to 3700 megahertz band, which is not assigned to a higher tier user, and may also operate opportunistically on unused priority access channels that are incorporated into the GAA tier. There will naturally be a large difference in the amount of bandwidth available depending on where you are operating within the country and competition from other operators in respective areas. Anywhere between a minimum of 80 megahertz up to the full 150 megahertz may be available in the GAA tier in any given geographic area. The Competitive Carriers Association, also known as CCA, who is a premier advocacy organization for competitive wireless carriers and stakeholders, the Cellular Telecommunications Industry Association, also known as CTIA, who represents the U.S. wireless communications industry from carriers and equipment manufacturers to mobile app developers and content creators, the CBRS Coalition and the Cross Industry Coalition are the largest influencers who have made proposals in regard to CBRS rules. On April 20th, 2018, CTIA and CCA proposed that the top 306 cellular market areas be licensed by CMA and the remaining 428 CMAs by county in all 7 PALs. On May 9th, 2018, the CBRS Coalition proposed instead that 5 PALs nationwide be by either county or CMA and 2 PALs nationwide by census tract. A 7-year term with renewal based on performance was also proposed. The most recent proposal came from the Cross Industry Coalition, primarily consisting of CBRS Coalition members, and they proposed a compromise. We believe that the groups are likely to meet at a happy medium near this proposal, which is visible on this slide. So who will be interested in each potential geographic license size? CMAs, you'll have interest from national and regional carriers and providers, large utilities who are probably unlikely to participate directly in auction. By county, you will have interest from local telco providers, large and medium-sized WISPs, large and medium-sized municipalities for smart city applications, utility co-ops, and critical infrastructure and industrial IoT. On a census tract basis, you'll have local telco providers, large and medium-sized WISPs, large and medium-sized municipalities for smart city applications, utility co-ops, and critical infrastructure and industrial IoT. What is a PAL worth? Here are some factors to consider. Unlicensed spectrum is subject to interference and lower power limits, and shared spectrum has some degree of coordination costs. When reliability for commercial or critical operations is needed, there is logical reasoning for a shift to licensed spectrum. We believe that demand for licensed spectrum is rising, and the demand for CBRS PALs will generally be quite high, but will obviously vary by location and interested stakeholders per PAL. As it was expressed on the last slide, stakeholder examples in this band are wireless internet service providers, mobile wireless carriers, satellite companies, IoT, utility, and cable companies. I'm sure we can list many more. There will be up to 7 PALs containing 10 megahertz of bandwidth each for a total of 70 megahertz of licensed spectrum per geographic area. In the nation today, there are 734 CMAs, over 3,200 counties across US states and territories, which would produce a medium cost for a license, and approximately 70,000 census tracts, and these licenses would obviously have the lowest cost. Another factor to consider is the FCC's regulatory regime. How favorable are PAL rules versus the GAA tier in relation to power limits, coordination burdens via the SAS, flexibility, applications? Would any require PAL versus GAA? The leases provide built-in financing to organizations that cannot participate or are unsuccessful in the PAL auction. Select Spectrum will continue to closely follow developments of the band and can help any operators looking to learn more. The GAA tier is a direct substitute for PALs in most cases, but Select Spectrum will elaborate on some additional possibilities. Here are some use cases for CBRS. CBRS is good for achieving higher speeds and has excellent line of sight performance. CBRS will make private LTE wireless networks economically and technically achievable for the first time with performance significantly better than Wi-Fi that is currently used for private networks. Small cell deployments, indoor or outdoor applications, which have lower power at a max 30 EIRP at 10 megahertz. Outdoor base stations, higher power at max 47 EIRP at 10 megahertz and requires professional installation. That being said, CBRS is not ideal for non-light of sight applications as it does not propagate well through obstructions such as buildings, trees, and other unfavorable terrain. On this slide, you will see other spectrum opportunities that can be used to substitute for CBRS or complement CBRS deployments. The first is 2.5 gigahertz. Licensed blocks typically contain 22.5 megahertz of capacity, and multiple are usually available for aggregation. The full band offers a total of 194 megahertz. 2.5 gigahertz spectrum provides 30-year license or lease terms, which means long-term investment and planning. Propagation is better in comparison to higher frequencies. The main drawback is availability, but this is set to change as the FCC released a notice of proposed rulemaking on May 10th, 2018 in regard to 2.5 gigahertz spectrum, and will likely provide for the issuance of thousands of new licenses in rural areas nationwide. Comments to the proceeding are due by August 8th, 2018. If anyone is attending today in an area of the country that is unserved by 2.5 gigahertz spectrum, please reach out to me directly offline. 600 megahertz has excellent penetration and range. T-Mobile and Dish were big winners in the recent auction, which ended in March of 2017. 900 megahertz and 700 have unique proprietary solutions in addition to LTE standard compliant solutions and are excellent for critical infrastructure and IIoT type of applications that do not require broadband capacity. Please inquire with us here at Select Spectrum for more information on those frequencies. So why obtain a 3.65 gigahertz license now? A 3.65 gigahertz NN license contains 50 megahertz of bandwidth, which is enough for a high performance network. Current license holders can develop a foothold in the band before the transition occurs. Licenses can only be acquired from existing license holders, being that there is a current freeze on applications. Select Spectrum can help any interested parties obtain a license at a reasonable price and a quick timeline, which would be approximately 1 to 2 months. A single license allows for links to be placed nationwide. The band is lightly built and an operator must coordinate with incumbent users, which Select Spectrum can assist with by introducing you to reputable coordinators. Non-grandfathered 365 band usage will be phased in shortly before the scheduled late 2019-2020 PAL auction, which will coincide with the SAS database launch. The expected transition means that there is little downside to starting a network build and testing with a 365 gigahertz license now. And this is one of the questions I get most frequently. If I buy a license now, what will happen to it once the transition occurs? The simple answer is that it'll be entered into the GAA tier, and this is ideal because it is likely that the bandwidth of the license will only increase. In addition to other Spectrum opportunities, Select Spectrum also has an inventory of around 3,900 licenses across 15 different bands. So please reach out if you're looking for any other opportunities. That is what we have today, and we hope everyone found this presentation informative. Now we will open up the webinar to any questions that any participants may have.